This video was made possible by Squarespace. Build your website for 10% off at squarespace.com/Wendover. 17 years ago, an aviation frontier was broken. Just before noon on March 1st, 2001, a Continental Airlines 777 lifted off from frosty Newark Airport across the river from New York City. It tracked north over the US, then Canada, and then just kept flying north until north became south. It flew south over Russia, then Mongolia, then mainland China before setting down at Chek-Lap-Kok Airport in Hong Kong after 16 hours. With that, there was a new longest flight in the world. The two cities had never before been connected by non-stop commercial flights. This was at the time a momentous achievement. All the business travelers making frequent trips between the two financial centers badly wanted this quicker flight. But you may be surprised that such a flight was an achievement so recently. Nowadays, non-stop Newark to Hong Kong flights are far from exceptional. 5 planes carrying more than 1,000 passengers total fly non-stop daily between the two cities, and nowadays, this route doesn't even crack the list of the top 20 longest flights in the world. Especially in the past 3 years, there's been a noticeable and dramatic rise in the number of ultra-long-haul flights. Among the 10 longest nonstop flights, the one on this list that's existed the longest, since 2009, is Delta's daily service from Johannesburg to Atlanta, the only flight by an American airline to South Africa. In 2016, United started nonstop flights between San Francisco and Singapore, ending an era during which there were no nonstop connections between the two countries. Just recently, in October 2018, Philippine Airlines began flying from Manila to New York nonstop on their new A350. In 2014, Qantas started flying nonstop in both directions from Sydney to Dallas, then the longest flight in the world. In early 2018, United added another connection to Down Under with their route from Houston to Sydney. Singapore Airlines added another US connection in November 2018, flying from Los Angeles, and Emirates has operated the longest nonstop A380 flight in the world from Dubai to Auckland since 2016. Qantas started the first and currently only nonstop connection between Australia and Europe in March 2018 with their daily Dreamliner service from Perth to London, and Qatar operates what was until recently the longest nonstop flight from Doha all the way to Auckland. Lastly, the longest flight in the world, confidently beating the runner-up by over 500 miles, is the newly launched daily Singapore Airlines flight between Singapore and Newark, clocking in at 9,534 miles and up to 19 hours of flight time, depending on winds. 8 of the 10 flights on this list were launched in the past 3 years. While it can be expected that as technology advances, airplane range will get longer, there's been a noticeable acceleration in the addition of nonstop routes between Earth's furthest city pairs. Like any phenomenon, this has causes and effects. One factor driving this surge in ultra-long-haul flights is the release of 2 new planes in the past decade, the A350 and 787. 6 of the 10 longest routes are flown by one of these 2 planes. Now, planes have existed before that could fly the routes these fly, but they weren't as economical. Singapore Airlines previously flew the world's longest flight from Singapore to Newark from 2004 until 2014 on their A340, but its high fuel consumption forced them to cancel the route as soon as oil prices ticked up. To fly fewer passengers a shorter maximum distance, the A340 uses 35% more fuel than the A350. Economics is everything with the world's longest routes. The truth is that flying a non-stop flight from Singapore to New York uses more fuel than flying a stopping service from Singapore to Tokyo to New York. Now, this might seem counterintuitive since planes use far more fuel per minute taking off than they do in cruise, and flying non-stop requires 1 takeoff instead of 2, but that's failing to consider that it uses fuel to carry fuel. With a 777-200, for example, flying 800 nautical miles will use about 30.6 pounds of fuel per mile. That pounds per mile average decreases up until reaching a total flight distance of about 3,000 nautical miles. Beyond that, the pounds per mile figure increases up until 8,000 nautical miles, where the aircraft would burn 32.2 pounds of fuel per mile flown. This is because eventually, the added fuel from flying the extra fuel needed to fly long distance overtakes the extra fuel used to take off. That means that, with this aircraft, which is used to fly the daily 8,000-mile Qatar flight between Doha and Houston, it would be more efficient on a fuel consumption basis to fly something like Doha to Paris, Paris to Halifax, and Halifax to Houston, rather than flying the whole trip in one go. This is part of the reason why cargo airlines rarely fly ultra-long-haul routes. While UPS has plenty enough cargo to support a non-stop flight between their Louisville and Hong Kong hubs and the aircraft that could fly it in one go, they fly the route with a stop in Anchorage, partially for fuel-saving reasons. Of course, any time on the ground is time that an aircraft could be in the air making money, so that degrades the savings, and that's part of why cargo airlines don't only fly in 3,000-mile hops. Time matters for cargo airlines, but not nearly as much as it does for passenger airlines. Passenger airlines have to deal with people, which are far more sensitive to a few extra hours of travel time than boxes. Non-stop flights are typically more desirable, especially to the business traveler, which is why airlines will price connecting itineraries typically higher than non-stop ones, even on short routes where the cost to the airline of operating a connecting itinerary is higher than that of a non-stop flight. With higher costs, airlines therefore need to justify operating non-stop flights instead of stopping ones. Singapore Airlines does operate another flight to New York via Frankfurt with a far larger A380, but the non-stop flight is primarily operated to appeal to the business traveler who can pay more. Often, the routes with enough demand to support ultra-long-haul flights are the ones with high business traffic between big wealthy cities like Sydney, Singapore, Hong Kong, London, and New York. Even though Hawaii, for example, is one of the top vacation destinations in the world, you just don't see many long-haul flights to it from places like London because leisure travelers are more sensitive to price and they'd rather pay less to fly via Los Angeles rather than on a non-stop from London for more. For this reason, on the A350s Singapore Airlines uses to fly to Newark, they didn't even bother including an economy class, the kind that leisure travelers tend to book. They only have premium economy and business class. With the lower weight from fewer bags, seats, and passengers, the plane can fly more efficiently to the other side of the world, and, from the airline's perspective, they're not losing out on much since, at the prices they would have to sell economy seats to be competitive, they really wouldn't be making much money anyways. The higher margins of premium classes give them a better shot of breaking even on this flight. Of course, the other factor contributing to the rise of these ultra-long-haul flights is the low cost of fuel. Jet fuel prices halved in 2015 and bottomed out at a cost of only 85 cents per gallon in January 2016. Since then, prices have steadily risen, leading some to question whether troubled times were ahead for the industry, but prices again took a dive in October 2018. Overall, over the past 4 years, prices are lower than ever, and with that, fuel represents a smaller proportion of an airline's cost, so it's proportionally cheaper to fly longer distances. This fluctuation in fuel cost has also contributed to the rise, and in some cases fall, of long-haul budget airlines such as Norwegian Airlines, WOW Air, and Primera Air. So we've established the causes of this proliferation of ultra-long-haul flights, but what are its effects? One of the busiest long-distance flows of passengers is from Europe to Australia and New Zealand, and vice versa. As two areas with close cultural and business connections, plenty of people travel between them, despite it taking about 24 hours each way. Before the turn of the century, almost every major European airline flew to Australia via some stopping point, like Bangkok, Singapore, or Hong Kong, including Air France, KLM, Lufthansa, Alitalia, and British Airways, some with multiple daily flights. Today, though, there is only one sole flight by a European airline to Australia, British Airways' once daily flight from London to Singapore to Sydney. Meanwhile, Qantas is the only Australian airline, and Air New Zealand is the only Kiwi airline to operate services all the way to Europe. All the airlines on each end have lost market share to those in between, the Asian airlines. In the past few decades, airlines like Emirates and Singapore Airlines have become the most popular for those traveling between the two areas, as if you were to fly British Airways, you would have to start in Sydney and end in London. Flying on Emirates, on the other hand, you can start at any of their 6 non-stop destinations in Australia and New Zealand, connect via Dubai, and end up at any of their dozens of European destinations with just one stop. It's just faster and often cheaper, and so, while British Airways operates 7 weekly flights to Australia, Emirates operates 84, and Singapore 137. Both of these airlines and more, including Cathay Pacific, Etihad, and Qatar Airways, have become experts in operating connecting flights between Europe and Australasia. But the reason they're able to do this is because you have to stop on these routes anyways. It's too far for non-stop flights, or rather, it used to be. Since March 2018, number 3 on that list of longest flights is Qantas' new non-stop flight from Perth to London. Many were skeptical when this flight launched that customers would prefer it to a one-stop option where they could pay less and stretch their legs halfway through the trip, but the data proves otherwise. Since launch, 92% of available seats on this route have been sold. This is an exceptionally good load factor, as it's called, as Qantas' average load factor for international flights is only 84%. For this reason, Qantas is strongly considering launching other non-stop European routes from Perth to Paris and Frankfurt. In addition, other airlines are looking at starting new non-stop routes from Europe to Australia. Founder Richard Branson has said that Virgin Atlantic is looking to start non-stop flights from London to Perth as soon as possible. Turkish Airlines, based in Istanbul, is technically still a European airline, even if it's just miles from the border with Asia, and it's set to become the first airline to start flying non-stop from Europe to Sydney if it follows through with its announced plans to launch these flights in 2019 with its new 787 Dreamliners. While the once-daily Qantas flight is doing little to cut into the Asian carrier's profits right now, if more and more flights start bypassing these Asian hubs, the major connecting airlines could be given a run for their money. Meanwhile, the race is on to see who will start flying what is perhaps the most valuable route in the world that doesn't yet have a non-stop connection: Sydney to London. Chances are the first will be Qantas. A number of years ago, Qantas challenged aircraft manufacturers Boeing and Airbus to create a plane that could fly the 21-hour non-stop flight fully loaded all the way to London. The manufacturers are close to delivering, and Qantas has said they will make their decision between the Airbus A350-1000 ULR or Boeing 777-8 by the end of 2019. From there, flights would start in 2022 or 23, not only on the Sydney to London route, but also potentially from Melbourne and Brisbane and to New York and Paris. Being the airline of choice for Australians, perhaps no airline globally has a better shot at making a 21-hour non-stop flight work than Qantas. With the arrival of the newest set of planes, airlines can now fly as far as 11,000 miles non-stop. That means that nearly every populated point on Earth can feasibly be connected by non-stop flights. With more technological advancements on their way, absolutely every point on Earth will soon be reachable non-stop. What that means is that the only factors now restricting the development of ultra-long-haul flights are economic, not technological. In many ways, the question of whether this trend of the proliferation of ultra-long-haul flights is up to the mercy of fuel prices. If they stay low, we'll have more and more of 18, 19, or 20-hour flights, while if they go up, you can be sure that airlines will cancel these routes in droves. While these planes are not flying any faster, they're getting passengers to their destination in less time, so these new non-stop routes to the other side of the world are helping to make the world just a little bit smaller, one flight at a time. If you have an idea for a business, whether it be just you as a freelancer or the next Fortune 500 company, one of the first steps in making an idea reality is setting up a website. No matter what you do, it's crucial in this century to have a website, and Squarespace helps you set up a site in as little as minutes for a reasonable monthly price. Their website builder is simple to use, and the customizable designer templates make it nearly impossible to create a bad-looking website. Squarespace also has excellent, award-winning 24/7 customer support in case you need help. They handle all the behind the scenes so you don't have to code, upgrade, or patch your website ever. Get started building your corner of the internet today by signing up for a free trial at squarespace.com/Wendover, and then, when you're ready to launch, that same link will get you 10% off, and you'll be supporting the show while you're at it. Also, on my other channel, Half as Interesting, I just released a video on the longest duration non-stop flight to ever exist, the 32-hour flight Qantas flew from Perth to Sri Lanka during World War II in order to reconnect the empire. Click the annotation on screen to check that out, and I'll see you again in 2 weeks with another Wendover Productions video.